Hello, Jim Lutz here with Black Belt Mind Training for Quanta, and thank you so much for taking the time to learn and apply techniques and strategies that will increase everything that you're looking to do when it comes to communicating with other individuals. Today I'm going to talk about a strategy that's very powerful, and it is the power of storytelling. And I want to first tell you a little bit about how storytelling will embrace the person that's listening and actually pull from their subconscious their ability to integrate your information that you're disseminating to them. You know, throughout history, stories have been how we have got inspiration into people, how we have commanded people to move, how we have moved entire nations because of the emotional empowerment that is engaging with a story. All too often when people are communicating, they'll communicate based on fact dissemination. They'll take facts and they will say, look, here are the facts and the facts should sell. Well, the facts tell and stories sell. So a story has the ability to create almost an Ericksonian response, Ericksonian hypnosis response within the individual. They become engrossed, if you will, with the story, and then I'm going to show you how to parlay the story and use what are called embedded commands within the story so that you can push your message across within the context of the story. So the first thing I want you to do is to set the stage. The same as if you're a producer and a director, you want to set the stage. So without actually saying, let me tell you a story, begin telling the story using a word such as imagine. And we've learned that in some of the other Black Belt Mind trainings. We want the mind to go inward. So we want to eliminate as much external stimuli as possible and allow the mind to go inward. So by doing that, they are now focused on the story, and you can begin cascading up with the plot, if you will, right? So let me give you an example. You know, I was at the beach the other day, and as I was at the beach, I saw a couple that were walking along the beach, and they were holding hands, and they were in their 60s or 70s, and I just felt that there was a certain amount of love that was between them. You could see it, that they've been together for a long time. They had that level of comfort. And that level of comfort really got to me, because you rarely see that these days. Now, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to show you how that compartmentalized story would fit into a sales presentation or communicating a certain point. You now have done what? You now have created a movie in their mind by telling a story. Within the context of that story is what? Unity and love, and feeling comfortable and feeling good. Now what you're able to do is get them to what? Identify with that emotion in the story. So now how do they begin to feel? They go inside their mind listening to the story and begin to elicit the emotions of comfort and love and acceptance. Now, who is that anchored to? It's anchored to you. Why? Because who's telling the story? You are. So their 5 physical senses, their auditory sense, or in this case auditory and visual, are looking at you and hearing you. So you're eliciting that emotional response through the story and weaving in whatever your outcome-based thinking is, or your outcome-based presentation. So when you're telling a story, make sure that the story has the plot or has the storyline that has to do with the emotion that you want to elicit from that individual. Say you wanted to elicit excitation with a group. And it could be a small group of 6 people or an audience of 6,000. Begin by telling the story that puts them in the state that they're currently in. So they're sitting there in what's called an anticipatory state. So they don't really know what you're going to do. So as you begin your presentation, and again, it can work with a one-on-one as well. As you're beginning your presentation, I want you to think engagement, attention, and dissemination. So engagement is done through a couple of ways. Number one is you can use the power of a pause. And some of the greatest speakers, and a lot of the speakers I train and speakers that you watch, you'll become aware of what the power of the pause is. When you walk out on stage, they are waiting for you, or you walk out in front of a workshop, or you walk in front of a small seminar. I want you to use the power of a pause, of the pause. I want you just to not say anything. They're expecting you to speak immediately. I want you just to take an extended period of time, 30 seconds. It'll seem like 30 minutes to the audience. 30 seconds, and I want you to do what I call quartering the room. Now, if it's a larger audience, I want you to quarter the room. I want you to do it like this. I want you to look to the left, and I want you to identify somebody in about row 3. That way, the person in row 1 and 2 think you're looking at them, but the people past row 3 will perceive you as looking at them also. But for focused attention, identify that person. Then I want you to go all the way over to the other quarter on your right. Now what I want you to do is do the same thing and just look at a person there. Say 10 seconds each. Now I want you to go back to the other quarter that is next to the first person on the far left and identify a person there. Then I want you to go back to the other remaining quarter. Now what that's doing is they're seeing you engage everybody in the audience. Everybody now feels engaged because they're not using their auditory sense to hear you. All they're doing is fixated on you. So don't make these mannerisms mechanical, make them natural. So it would look something like this. What's happening in their mind? Now, I've taught you on Black Belt Mind Training. The key is to Ericksonian hypnosis, persuasion, and influence is the exclusion of external stimuli. You need to go inside. Get their mind to go inside. That's what hypnosis is. When I hypnotize an individual, why do I have them close their eyes? For no other reason other than to shut out visual stimuli so that they can focus on the sound of my voice. So now during the power of the pause, their mind is doing what? Processing. They're processing, what's he doing? And you've created now what's called an anticipatory response, which engages the number one rule of the subconscious mind, which is, what is expected tends to be realized. I've created anticipation. They're going, when's he going to say something? What's he going to say? I can't wait for him to say it. They're getting impatient. They don't know what I'm doing. So now they're in a heightened state of receptivity for my story. Because the next thing I'm going to do is increase and retain that engagement, not by saying, hello everybody, and stating a bunch of facts. I'm going to say, welcome. As you sit in the chair looking at me on stage, it reminds me of something. About 3 years ago, I was walking along the beach, and it was a beautiful beach in San Diego, California, in a town called Del Mar. And I looked over and I saw this couple. And this couple were holding hands, not in just a friendly way, but in a loving way, an engaging way, a relationship way. And you could tell that there was a sense of trust with those individuals. Did you catch the anchor? Who did I point to when I said trust? Me. So I'm physically anchoring that word, which is subsequently amplified by the emotion. So how did I engage them? Let's retract for a second. First thing I did is I created the power of the pause. So now I came out, and you can do this one-on-one as well. So I came out and I took that 30-second, 40-second pause. Their mind goes in because they're waiting. Now I've got anticipation. Now when I begin to speak, I used what's called an empathetic framework. Empathetic meaning, as you sit there watching me. So what's the first thing I said? Welcome, as you sit there watching me. That's called a truism. They cannot argue with that. Almost as if I'm a psychic knowing what they're doing, right? So as you sit there watching me, I've already have them. That's the first thing they heard. The first thing they heard was accurate. So now what I've done, I've diluted their resistance. Why? Because they're in a state of anticipatory response. What's he going to say? What's this guy doing? I can't wait for him to say something. I wonder what it's going to be. And the first thing I say is something that builds instant rapport. As you sit there looking at me, he's right. That's what I'm doing, right? As subtle as it is, the mind is now going further inward, further inward, further inward. Now I engage as the producer and the director of the story. So the purpose of the story in this example is to elicit the emotion of love and connection and relationship and harmony, right? So as I elicit those emotions, I'll take it to the next step. So remember the story. We have the couple walking on the beach, holding hands. Boy, did they ever look like they were in love. You know, the guy actually had a blue jacket on. She had a blue jacket. It looked almost like they picked them out together. And, you know, I just had that emotion of that lifelong love that everybody wants and that trust. that you have when you see people like that have each other's back and they've been together and there's that certain amount of trust. You know, oftentimes, you know, when I have a client, for instance, a lot of times the client will come in and we build up kind of the same type of trust. Now, see what my segue was? If I was selling a service or a seminar or whatever it is that you do, if that was in fact what you're doing, then I've made what's called a bridge. So I did what? Let's go back again. I used the power of the pause to gain attention. Then I moved straight to what? Straight to the rapport building with when I started talking welcome. As you sit in your chair watching me on stage, now they know what I'm doing. Now I go into the story because they're already inside their subconscious. They're engaged, if you will, not detached. And now what will happen is I'll elicit emotions through the power of the story because they're listening. Now the emotions will come up. It's not unlike watching a sad movie to where you're just engrossed in the movie and you start to tear up. I've done it. We've all done it. It's a story. You're creating the movie here. So now they've got a heightened state of emotion, just like watching a sad, movie, and you start to engage in a what? Vicarious emotion with the people that are online. So now what we're looking at doing is taking that emotion. I just want you to be really clear on how this works. Take that emotion, elicit it, and then do a bridge to some situation, person, place, thing, sales process, whatever it is that you're doing. And now you've got them in that state, if you will. So now I'm going to talk about another situation, telling a story about what? Third-person client that came in. So take the story and connect it to something that you want to do to elicit the same emotion. So let's go over a bridge. So now I've got the emotion of love, connection, trust, rapport built through the context of a story of the couple on the beach. Now the bridge will be, last week I had a client come in and he owns a large real estate company in Phoenix, Arizona. And as we were sitting there, we just kind of hit it off. We both began to talk about how we both like the martial arts and, how we grew up during the same time. And I remember when we were in the martial arts and, he was going ahead and actually studying the same type of martial arts I was. And we just had this connection, and he began to understand that I could really help his company, his brokers and his agents, with the sales process by what I was able to do. Not unlike the offer that we're going to have at the end of the seminar, to where you and I can make that same connection to where I can mentor you remotely through what? The CD programs, whatever it is, if it's BOR, back of room sales, whatever it is that you're doing, I've built that bridge with an emotional bridge, and now I'm going to insert a story. Very important you understand this. I'm going to insert a story that shows another individual in the story, character if you will, that elicited the same emotional connection with me. So how's it work? First, I've got a story that talks about other people. That elicits the emotion, right? Defenses are down, emotions are elicited. This is what this couple felt like, right? People buy emotionally and justify logically. That's what this couple felt like. Okay. Now, I remember a client, Bridget. I remember a client, that came in, and we had so much in common. We were in martial arts together. Now I've taken it from this couple, unknown on the beach, one step closer to somebody that's actually interacting with me, and I'm telling the story of how they interacted with me. Now the second bridge will be from that person that I met to them, whether that be an audience or whether that be an individual client. So now I'll take it from, not unlike how you'll feel when you utilize my strategies and tactics in your own life for your own real estate business. It's absolutely going to be remarkable, because when we make that connection, then the strategies, techniques, and methodologies you're going to learn are unlike any that you've ever seen anywhere. So you're using a story to build a subsequent bridging of emotions all the way to the end. And that's why people ask me, Jim, when you do a seminar, how come everybody runs to the back of the room and buys everything? How come when I do a seminar, they go, namaste, and they go to the bathroom and go home? I go, that's because you're teaching. And I had a woman ask me, been asked this 100 times. I had a woman say, Jim, how are you doing that? Are you hypnotizing them? No, I'm not. I'm using embedded emotional bridges. And they go, okay. And she goes, how come I can't do that? I go, well, tell me what you do. And she said, well, I'm a woman's transitional coach. And I teach people how to overcome areas in their life that are holding them back. And I teach people how to really get to know themselves and become an authentic woman. And I teach people how to, I said, stop right there. That's why you can't produce an income based on your construct of your workshops and your seminars. Why not? I go, you're teaching. She goes, I know. I go, well, go Google what teachers make. They don't make that much money. I don't care if you're teaching the guitar, biology, meiosis, mitosis, or whether you're teaching relationship, teachers don't make a lot of money. So teaching, nobody ever left a biology class wanting to buy anything. But they sure knew about cell division, didn't they? They sure did. And so once it looks more like school, then they're using what? Recalled. Oh boy, I'm studying. So now what you're using bridged emotions in the form of storytelling, those defenses are down. You're not teaching, they're engaged. People pay to go see a movie. A movie is nothing more than a well-produced, multi-million-dollar story. That's all it is. So that's where the emotion comes from. The laughter at a comedy movie, the sadness at a dramatic movie, the excitation at an action movie. Those emotions can be elicited. If you want excitation, then start talking about, I went to the mountains the other day and people were snowboarding. And, it was interesting, as I had never been, to where they snowboard before. And as I was watching this individual, he began his descent down the hill, and then he hit one of those things called a jump. It was like a ramp, and I watched him go up, and my God, I sat there. My heart was going. I've engaged them in the story. What's my purpose of doing that? Elicit the excitation. So if I was selling a subsequent seminar, excitation would be the emotion I want. So they're moving into excitation, and then I'll show you later on other Black Belt Mind trainings how to craft your offer for minimal resistance to the buyer. That's an entirely different linguistic pattern that you'll use. But again, you're going to begin to use the emotions based with the power of the pause at the beginning. So does that start to make sense? Think about your emotions being your ally. Think about how to get the mind to go inward. Think about how to elicit those emotions. Now let's have some fun and go over some other emotions. Let's say that you used what I call reverse context. Reverse context is you can have a person feel excited about something. You can also have them feel bad about something and then connect that feeling of regret, or not negativity, but feeling bad, not feeling down, not feeling depressed, but feeling bad about something. Then you can connect it to their current state or where they're at in life, and then you give the solution, okay? So let's use that as an emotional bridge. I was out the other day and I was making a purchase, at one of the stores. I believe it was Target over here. And the girl paused for a second and she looked at me. And, there was a line behind me, but she looked at me with a very caring type of look. And she said, would you like to donate $1 to help the kids that are homeless? And she goes, because I was homeless. And now I have a job, but it really pains me to see kids that were where I was. So I donated the $1. And then my mind began to think about all of the people out there that are maybe cold. Maybe they don't live in San Diego. They're cold, and their children are there. And maybe they made some wrong turns in life, some bad decisions. And they just really feel bad where they're at because they are a smart person. They are a caring person. They are a loving person. And they feel bad about where they're at. And oftentimes many of us will feel bad about decisions we've made or things that we've done. And we're not sure, exactly how we got here. And the key is that when you feel like that, you become like that woman and you find a path out. And you find that path out based on knowing that you're better than your current circumstances. Not unlike a guy named Mike that came to one of my trainings once, and he pretty much had thrown in the towel. Did you see the bridge? The bridge was from a story, third person, that I was telling about the girl, which is true, by the way, about the $1 for the homeless kids. I elicited the emotion. I brought it to one person closer to me, who is Mike, my client. What did Mike do? Mike was my client. What happened when Mike became my client? He found his way out. What happened when he found his way out? His self-esteem, his self-image, his self-confidence went up. What happened when that went up? He started dating. What happened when that went up? He let go of that divorce he was hanging on to. What happened when that went up? A prospective employer saw his sense of self-esteem and confidence and gave him a job. What happens when that went up? It quantum leaped his confidence, self-esteem, and self-image even further. What happens when that went up? Let's do the next bridge. You know, Mike was so excited that everything changed, and all he did was go through my Mind Masterpiece program. A simple step that created a quantum leap in every area of his life. Pulling the emotion from third-party story where it was elicited into a secondary party that had interacted with me already into that person. You can do that whether it be individual to individual. You can do it whether it be a small audience, or if you're a speaker and you speak in front of thousands of people like I do, then you can do it in front of an entire audience. Now here's the key. You have to have enough self-esteem, enough self-image, and enough self-confidence to know that you are exchanging value for the dollar. If you don't, then you need to reassess what you're doing. Because if you are in sales, then money is a medium of exchange. That's all it is. I call it a social lubricant. That's all it is. If it sits in your pocket or in a shoebox, it does nothing. It is a medium of exchange for value. I love spending money on things that I get value from, whether it be goods or services, whatever that is. So the same thing with you. If you have an impasse, and we're going to cover this on some of the relationship components, your relationship with money. If you have an impasse with that, then the subconscious will keep you poor because you're going to have a thermostat that will max out at whatever income. So whatever you do, I can take anybody's content, craft it, and show them a model to where they can go to six figures with that content, providing they don't have a block on making that amount of money. What's the most common reason people have a block? Academic hierarchy. Because we're conditioned that what? Bachelor's degree, you make X. You have to get a master's to make more. You have to get a PhD to make more. My friends, I have a high school education and I've run 3 corporations. And I hire people with master's degrees. Why? Because I didn't listen to that being the con. Go back 300 years, show me somebody with a master's degree. They were all entrepreneurs. They traded pelts for the blacksmith. Somebody put that whole thing together and we all bought into it, right? And that's a whole other subject of how it got put together and why. But you have to realize where your programming comes from, then eliminate any money blocks, then use strategies and tactics such as storytelling to engage and elicit the emotional response, bridge it to somebody that has already been with you in a relationship if you wanted to, or in business, and then bridge it again to a service-oriented value proposition for that individual. So that's Black Belt Mind Training for today. The art of storytelling, bridging emotions, powerful and effective. Practice, practice, practice. And we'll see you on the next Black Belt Mind Training with Quanta.